All right. Hey, so really, really glad that you guys are here. Man, can we give our team a hand for all the work that they've done to put this thing together? Really, really cool. Really, really grateful for all the work. I told Danielle I wasn't going to steal her stand, and I did anyway, so make sure I put it back when we're done. Hey, so glad you guys are here. What an honor to gather. So a couple of things as we get into this evening. Man, I hope that you are encouraged and inspired as we leave this place today, and I hope that a vision is set in your heart of being a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's really what this season is about. And so I hope that you extend grace to the second service of all of the unique little things that it takes to pull something like this off, and also see yourself as a part of this. Now, we say often that we are more than just a weekend church, and so weekends are something that we do, and we think it's important that we gather, but it's not the only thing that we do. And so we are all about helping people discover their purpose and make a difference and really living the life that God has made you and I to live. And so let me ask you a few questions as we get into our conversation today. I wonder how many of you have had, you don't have to raise your hands for this because it might be awkward, but bad experiences with religion. Right, or maybe you know someone who has had bad experiences. I got two hands in the back. Maybe you know someone who has had bad experiences with religion. Or both, right? Not only do you know people, but you've had a taste of that. I don't know if you know this, but so did Jesus. Jesus had a few bad run-ins with religion. I have a lot of people, especially as we're having conversations and engaging and loving our city and talking to friends and neighbors. And I have a lot of people say, well, I'm not religious. To which I'll respond, me either. And I know what they mean when they say that. I don't know if they know what I mean when I say that, but I say it anyway. And Jesus wasn't religious either, but I recognize some of what we mean by this language. And so I wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about who Jesus really was. And so I don't know if you know this, but Jesus oftentimes was found directly opposing the religious leaders of his day. And so I don't know where you are today. Maybe you walked in and you're a follower of Jesus. Maybe you walked in and you're on the line. You're like, I don't really know. I mean, I believe in God, but I don't know what that means for me necessarily on a daily basis. Or maybe you walked in and you're like, man, I don't even know if I believe in God. I'm not even sure I'm willing to cross that line. Or maybe you're just like, I don't even know what I believe. I just showed up because I got a cool straw that said we don't suck. So that's why I'm here. I don't know why you're here, but man, I'm really glad you are. And here's what I want to say. Regardless of where you find yourself on your spiritual journey, here's my question for you and I. When you think of Jesus, what comes to mind? Like who is Jesus? What do you see when you picture Jesus? Like a good man, or this man of God, like a good example to follow. I hear that a lot. Maybe like polite, blue-eyed, flowing locks, epic beard Jesus, right? I mean, or maybe like soft-spoken sandals and a robe Jesus. Like I don't know what you think of when you think of Jesus, but growing up, I would walk into my grandparents' house, right, and they had this picture of Jesus hanging on their wall. For the record, I'm pretty sure Jesus wasn't Caucasian. But I remember walking in and I'm like, man, like this guy's got that thing going on. And how did he get his beard to be shaped like that? And his hair's really nice. Anyway, I remember walking in and seeing this picture like front and center every time I went into my grandparents' house. And I had this like vague idea of what Jesus might have been. And so just for fun, I decided to Google what others think about Jesus. And so, maybe you have this version of Jesus, or maybe you have this one. Like, I like Smart Jesus, right? Like, Jesus with a PhD, you know what I'm saying? Or I really liked this one right here, Dreadlock Jesus, right? Like, that one is cool. Really dig that. Or, there's also Jesus from The Walking Dead, right? How many Walking Dead fans in the room? Anybody Walking Dead fans? Like, 2 of us. Great. The rest of you guys need to get with it. It's Halloween. I thought a Walking Dead. All right, well, anyway, zombie show in case you don't know what's up. And there's a guy named Jesus. He's not really Jesus. He just looks like Jesus. And so I don't know, like, what you think of when you think of Jesus, like who he was, and just a holistic idea. Most people, will acknowledge, okay, Jesus existed, and at least he was a good example, taught some good things, made a difference in the world. But I think, especially in our Western culture, we kind of have this unique thing we do to Jesus. And so I think Ricky Bobby from Talladega Nights sums it up. So I want you to watch this clip with me real fast.
Here, 8 pound, 6 ounce, newborn infant Jesus. Don't even know a word yet. Just a little infant, so cuddly, but still omnipotent. Dear tiny Jesus, your golden fleece diapers with your tiny little fat balled up fist
He
pawing.
was a man. He had a beard.
Dear tiny infant Jesus.
Hey, sweetie,
Jesus did grow up. You don't always have to call him baby. It's a bit odd and off-putting to pray to a baby.
Well, look, I like the Christmas Jesus best, and I'm saying grace.
So I don't know what your experience is.
Here,
That's not a great movie,
8
by the way.
pound,
I'm not
6
promoting that.
ounce.
I kind of am, I guess, but it was funny. It's all I could think of. So, I don't know what your version of Jesus is, but I think that this happens a lot where we kind of have our version of Jesus that we like, and we want to compartmentalize and make Jesus into what fits our desires best. But I heard someone recently call Jesus a savage. Savage Jesus, carpenter. One of my friends, he was an artist, and because he knew that Jesus was a carpenter, he drew this picture of Jesus with bulging biceps and sweat from his brow because he would build tables and he was a manly man. I don't know what your picture of Jesus was, but I wanted to bring up a few things that maybe help our conversation today. What about table flipping Jesus? Right, you ever heard of that guy? Right, you don't see Jesus flipping tables on a T-shirt. Maybe you do. We need some of those. All right, but what about the Jesus that drove people out of a temple with whips? Right, what about that Jesus? Or what about the Jesus? Bob Goff calls him a friend of loose women. What about that Jesus? Or what about the Jesus that would hang out with tax collectors and drunks and sinners, like the less clean version of Jesus? Or what about the Jesus that got up all in the face of the religious leaders? Right, he would call them hypocrites and fools and blind guides and a bunch of snakes. Right, what about that Jesus? He even called him. One time he got so mad, he was like, man, you are of your father, the devil. You don't see a lot of Christian T-shirts with that on it, right? Well, what about that Jesus? And so the reason I bring that up is because I think Jesus is maybe a little more holistic than we sometimes compartmentalize him in our culture. And so again, you might not even believe Jesus is God at this point, and I understand that. But let's just look at, take a picture of who Jesus is on a bigger scope. And so we're going to be in the book of Mark, chapter 1, verse 40. It'll be on the screen here for you. And I just want to look at a story of Jesus doing something totally unconventional, totally against the religion of the day, and see what it might mean for you and I, and just see what our interpretation of Jesus might mean for us. So check this out. There was a man with leprosy that came and knelt in front of Jesus begging to be healed. And he said, if you're willing, you can heal me and make me clean. And then Jesus, moved with compassion, reached out and touched him and said, I am willing, be healed. Instantly, the leprosy disappeared and the man was healed. So I want to park it right here for just a moment, okay? A couple of things from this. So this is a record from some of Jesus' followers of a few of the miracles that we see happening. But this one in particular is a big, big deal. So there's a guy with leprosy, right? I don't know if you know what leprosy is, right? Skin disease. Apparently, armadillos carry leprosy. I don't know if you knew that. In case next time you see an armadillo and want to get all cuddly, just remember leprosy, all right? And leprosy in this time, right, I Googled it, and apparently, we have some treatments, still not curable, but in that day, not only is it highly contagious, but it's uncurable, and you're just kind of stuck. And so when you have leprosy, not only are you in immense pain because of the skin disease that you have, but you're also in immense emotional pain because you get isolated from community. Right? You're not allowed to be around anyone because of the fear of you sharing what you have. It's highly contagious, and so then you're kind of ostracized and isolated. And I want you to notice here, in verse 40, it says, a man with leprosy came to Jesus. I thought it was interesting when I read this. Just a guy with leprosy. We don't know his name. We don't know what he looked like. We don't know anything about this guy. Age, height, profession, width, performance. We don't know anything about him other than his disease. So there's a story that starts, and this man has lived his life in such a way, we don't know how long he's been a leper, but odds are it's been a long time, and it's even more so going to be a long time coming, if that makes sense. There's no hope for this guy. There's nothing they can do to help him. And so he has been in this condition for so long that he no longer has a name. He's simply identified by his problem. Are you with me? And I started thinking about what that means for you and I. And I don't know, have you ever been identified by your problems? Right, we don't get this guy's name. He's become known with what's wrong with him. And we live in a culture that's so focused on identity. I was thinking about it. Is this struggle for identity, is not most of our life wrapped up in this idea of identity? Who am I? What am I doing? What do I have to bring to the table? How do I impact and influence others? Like, our identity plays a huge part in everything that we do, our pursuits and our success and our careers and the way we build families and the way that you take a picture of your family on Instagram with just the right smiles, even though everyone is crying and yelling at each other right before that to get everybody to sit still and shut up. Maybe that's just me. Okay, so, right, and we have this need constantly to identify a certain way, and there's so much pressure put on us in our culture for the identity that we are building. And I don't know if this is familiar with you, but for me, I feel the pressure of performance, of who you are, and what you're bringing to the table, what makes you significant, right? One of the first questions that happens when you meet a new person is what? What do you do? What do you do? Because we have built so much. Danielle just apologized for asking that question. That's hilarious. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a problem what you do, but we take a lot of stock in our identity being wrapped up in what we do. The problem with that is then our emotions rise and fall with our pursuit of what we perceive as success. So I don't know about you, but I found myself identified by my problems often growing up. I mean, you could say I was in an identity crisis all through high school or all through middle school and high school, and most of you probably were too. Unless you were that popular jerk, then I guess you were the one that was giving everybody an identity crisis. But right, this guy is being identified by others by his problems, right? And so I want you to think, everything that he used to have is gone. Whatever performance he had, whatever pedigree he had, whatever personality he had, it didn't matter who he was or what he brought to the table, because his problem had totally taken over his identity. And I can remember growing up struggling immensely with identity, not growing up in church, not knowing Jesus, not having a source and a foundation for who I was or what to do with that. And so I tried to find identity in a lot of things. But I can remember people prescribing my identity to me. You're too short. You're too small. You're too scrawny. You're too this. Your braces are ugly. Your hair looks funny. One time my mom, like back in the day when it was cool to get highlights in your hair as a dude. If you have highlights, I'm sorry, I'm not making fun of you, by the way. It's still cool. Anyway, one time, right, I was impatient and I wanted to get the highlights done early, and so I washed it out too early. Instead of blonde streaks, it was orange. And I'm like, it'll be all right. And I got to school. It wasn't all right. Got made fun of a lot for that. One time in particular, right, people would look at me and start defining me by my problems. And what's unique is they're not really problems, are they? You can't do anything about them, but ironically, people prescribe problems for you. The opinions seem to go a long way. But one time we're on a field trip, and I'm sitting in the back of the bus with my friend, and there's this girl crushing on me, right, like they always did. I was like the one girl that ever crushed on me. But it was still happening. Actually, what's funny is I didn't like this girl. She was really bothering me and annoying. Middle school, and maybe I was too cool for school. I don't know what was happening. But her and her friend were sitting in the seat in front of us, and she kept trying to get my attention and whatever, and I just didn't want anything to do with her because I liked her friend instead. And anyway, so all that's going on. And then I think how girls can like you and then be mean to and intentionally that's somehow liking you still. Right, well, that happened, right? So she looks over the back of the seat of the bus, those brown, nasty, who knows what's on it seats. She looks like that. And she looks at me and says, "You have a unibrow." I'm like, "What's a unibrow?" Right? I'm 12 years old. I'm I didn't even know people had. Anyway, and so she's like, "You ever thought about plucking your eyebrows?" I'm like, "Why would I do that?" And so then I get home and look in the mirror, and I'm like, I had bushy eyebrows this whole time and no one told me, right? So then, right, what does a 12-year-old boy do? Nothing good, right? So then you have less eyebrows than you should have, and it's just bad. And then they grow back even bushier the next time. No one tells you that. It's sad. Don't look at my eyebrows, right? I know. After this, you guys are all gonna be looking, right? And so, man, you get identified by your problems, but not just by others. Some of us have identified. We self-identified, right, our problems, right? You're incredibly hard on yourself. You're constantly trying to succeed, but you beat yourself up. You're really self-critical, and that depression starts to seep in, right? You have a good day and then 10 bad days and a good day, and everything is rising and falling because you're really hard on yourself on top of whatever problems you've adopted or allowed to be perceived. And so then Netflix becomes your only friend and a pint of ice cream. You know what I mean? Some of us self-identify our problems and allow that to become who we are. And then some of us, man, we work voraciously to overcome our problems. Right? Well, we know we have them, but then we spend all of our energy, all of our effort, everything that we have to really hide them, to overcome them, to be so distracted, so busy, with so much going on continually that we can ignore our problems, hide our problems, run away from our problems. We know that they're there. They come out sometimes, especially in our families. People closest to us really see the inside, but we have this struggle of identifying with our problems. And I want you to think about it for a second. This man, this guy with leprosy, his problems are external, right? People can see his problems on his skin. And in some ways, I think he might have it easier than you and I do. You say, what do you mean? How could it possibly be easier than the sores on your skin? Because this guy might have spots on his skin, but man, you and I, we have spots on our souls. You know what I mean? And you know, it doesn't take long. You call it whatever you want. But that ugly's in there, and it comes out often. And if you're like me, you don't know what to do with it sometimes. Or sometimes it happens and it's already over, and you don't even know what happened or why it came out, but that it was ugly. And I mean, Danielle will, Danielle knows the real me. My wife, she knows. And so it's sometimes hard because I don't want to get up here and act like my life is together. Man, I got spots all over my soul. And then because we live in this culture that's constantly validating us based on our performance, based on our personality, based on our pedigree, we have this struggle of even wanting to look on the inside. Everything's focused externally. And then we have this constant turmoil of what's going on. Let me ask you this question. What if I told you that there was someone that can see all of your failures, all of your problems, all of your mistakes, the good, the bad, the ugly, can see everything that you are, and does not validate you based on your performance, does not validate you based on your personality or your pedigree, but rather someone that could validate you based on your position? You see, when I was 15 years old, I met a guy named Jesus, and it wasn't just this picture of Caucasian flowy beard, soft-spoken Jesus. It was a Jesus that not only gave his life for me, but promised me a better life in return. This exchange. And in the process, not only was he offering me a life to live, but a new identity to adopt. And the reality became clear at 15 that what God said about me was more important than what other people thought about me. Now let me be clear, at 15 years old, Jesus changed my life. I started following him. My identity changed. It was incredible. But those spots on the soul didn't necessarily go away. It's this process of constantly reminding myself of who Jesus says I am over what people think. Can I be honest with you? There's an immense amount of anxiety that goes into speaking publicly, right? I really care what you think about how I speak. I try not to. I can pretend like I don't. This is not me fishing for compliments, by the way, after the service. Although if you got some, go ahead and drop. I know. No, right. So, but honestly, I know me. I know what I struggle with. I know the identity crisis. But I have a God who says something different. So, and what his opinions just happens to be bigger. and so let's talk about this. This guy shows up, and he comes to Jesus and kneels in front of him. Now, I want you to get this. This guy with leprosy, right, he has been isolated, and the law doesn't let him get anywhere near the crowd. So let me show you, okay? I counted this out so you don't have to watch me, but this is going to be really awkward because there's no one up here while I'm talking. But just so you have an idea of how far this guy had to stand away from community, I have to walk all the way out here to the light pole in the parking lot, and I'm now outside. I can't even see you. It's really awkward. Hey, what's up, man? How are you? And, we're all the way out here at this first light pole. I know you guys can't see me, but this is where this man would have had to stay at a distance of 50 paces outside of any human interaction. And so not only is he isolated, but he's isolated at an immense distance. How weird was that? Still connected. Hey, all right. So I just want you to see, it's still walking back 50 paces from any human interaction. That's what religion said this man had to do in order to stay away, to follow the rules. And so for him to come to Jesus is not just like, oh, hey, Jesus. We're talking 50 paces from the light in the parking lot to where I'm standing right here. And it's not just that it's a journey. You see, because if this guy were to get caught, they could kill him on the spot. And so you have to think about this. This guy's making a decision in the moment. He's heard about this guy named Jesus. He's not even sure if showing up's going to do anything for him. But the pain of being defined by something that is broken and has kept him isolated is worse than dying at this point, that he's willing to risk his life. And so in some ways, guys, listen, he should have never made it to Jesus. Right? I mean, with the crowds around him and the people, I mean, the religious leaders should have never let this guy get to Jesus. Here's what's amazing. Listen. He broke every rule in the book that religion had prescribed to get to Jesus. And I want you to get this. Listen. Religion can't fill in the blank, but Jesus can. Religion can't help me deal with anxiety, but Jesus can. Religion can't heal my marriage, but Jesus can. Religion can't give me identity, but Jesus can. Religion can't give me peace, but Jesus can. Religion can't give me a relationship with God, but Jesus can. Religion can't empower me to make a difference in the world around me, but Jesus can. Religion can't heal the spots on my soul, but Jesus can. Religion can't help me deal with my anger. It can't help me be a better parent. It can't help me have peace and be able to love in a consistent way, but Jesus can do all of those things. And in this moment, I want you to see what religion has kept this man away for this long, and Jesus is about to heal him in an instant. It's beautiful. Here's my question. For this guy, there were some reasonable things that could have kept him from Jesus, but he wasn't willing to give it up. What's keeping you from Jesus? For me, a long time, it may be ignorance, pride. I was thinking about it, man, what are some of the roadblocks? I mean, being killed is a pretty good one, right? Not coming to Jesus. I mean, weighing that one out. But I think some of it's cognitive. Or maybe you're here and you're like, man, I don't even know if I believe in Jesus. Like, there's this mental capacity of like, is it possible that someone could even be God? And figuring out all the pieces of why I would even need a relationship with Jesus in the first place. Or, man, some of it's pride. Like, maybe you say, okay, even if it is real, I'm not willing to submit my heart and mind to have anybody tell me what to do. I'm my own boss, right? Or maybe it's fear, right? The idea of following Jesus, man, what is my spouse going to think? What is my neighbor's going to think? My family going to think? Like, what are people going to think when I start following Jesus? Maybe some of those weird guys will be like, Drake, it's going to be awkward. Some of you laugh. That's good. Okay, thank you for laughing at me. All right, and then I think some of us is confusion. The reality is, I think some of you in the room, man, you've heard about Jesus before, but you never heard about the real Jesus. You had a compartmentalized Jesus, a Jesus that was based out of religion and not relationship. And I want you to know that Jesus is standing in the face of religion and saying it's not ever going to work. But I came to give you a relationship that works instantaneously. And so I don't know what it is that's keeping you from Jesus, but I'd like you to keep that in mind as we look at this next point. Check it out. Go back to that verse, guys. So Jesus came, the man with leprosy came and he knelt in front of Jesus. I want you to see this. He took the 50 paces to get to Jesus. He came all the way to Jesus. But it wasn't until he hit his knees that Jesus made him clean. It's a heart and a mind attitude, right? It's not about the actual physical condition, but it represents an internal condition. A humility of heart. And listen, I've seen a lot of people come all the way to Jesus cognitively, and then they won't bow the knees of their heart. And I want you to know, man, listen, you can come all the way to Jesus cognitively, but if it doesn't happen here, it's not genuine, it's not real. And so it's this moment when this guy comes and gets before Jesus in a manner that is in humility, that Jesus makes him clean. And I know that's sometimes hard to understand, but what's amazing is God says that if we'll humble ourselves, he's the one that lifts us up. It's not a bad position to be in, to have someone who loves me and knows me better than I do, to be the one in control of my life. That's what happened at 15. I didn't completely understand it, didn't have a clue, never read a Bible, never hated church at the time. but I was all about whatever Jesus had to offer. So how about the knees of your heart? It's a hard place to be. Here and here. Maybe you feel like God's doing something in your life today. Will you be willing to bow right here? Now, here's the deal. Maybe you're a follower of Jesus in the room, and you've bowed the knees of your heart. But man, at 15, just if I can be honest, right, I didn't become perfect. I didn't start following Jesus perfectly. There's a lot of rebellion still in my heart today that I'm constantly trying to figure out how to give to Jesus. And so I think, man, if we're not careful, we compartmentalize our relationship with Jesus to where we bow certain areas. Like if you're a follower of Jesus, this is why you can see people who say they're followers of Jesus and then they're hypocritical, right? Because we compartmentalize. So I'm going to bow my finances to Jesus, but I'm not going to bow my attitude to my wife. I'm going to bow my parenting to Jesus, but I'm not going to bow my political views. I'm going to bow my hobbies to Jesus, but I'm not going to bow my career. And we just start to compartmentalize because we have our golden fleece version of baby Jesus that we want to, Jesus cares about this stuff, but not this stuff over here. And I get it. This is hard. Just for the record, this is some hard stuff. Man, this guy's at a point where he doesn't care. Anything is better than what he's been living. And what he's about to be introduced to is better than anything he's ever seen. Now check this out. He said, if you're willing, you can make me clean. This guy comes to Jesus, and I just want you to see his mentality is, if you're willing, you could do it. And so he is not necessarily doubting Jesus and his ability. He's doubting Jesus and his willingness. And I don't know where you are today, right? Maybe you're confident that there's a God who can make mountains and oceans in the universe, but you're just not sure that he's willing to do anything in your life or that he's able. Or maybe the opposite, right? I don't even know if he's able. I want you to watch what happens here. Moved with compassion, Jesus reached out and he touched him. And he said, I'm willing. This word compassion, I was studying, and the Bible's translated from Greek. And so we have lots of versions. That's why, because it's coming from a different language. And some of the versions will say that Jesus was indignant or he was angry and reached out, which is a weird emotion, right? Like, can you see Jesus like angry at this? Be healed, I'm willing, right? Like what's the emotion here? I looked up the word, and it's this Greek word called orgizo. It's where we get our word organ from. And I want you to understand that this response that Jesus has when he sees the man, he's broken all the religious laws, and he sees him come up, and he has this feeling of orgizo, and it's more than compassion. It's like I feel it in my guts. Does it make sense to you? It's Jesus could feel for the man. Not just acknowledging that he needed some help, but Jesus actually felt for him. The isolation, the detriment that he would never see or touch his daughter again or be a part of his family. Jesus felt for this man, that religion had isolated him for all of this time. There was a deep, gut-wrenching feeling of love and compassion. It's a lot deeper than just compassion. And he reaches out and he touches him. Why is this such a big deal? Jesus could have just said, be healed, and it happened, right? Jesus risks everything right here. He touches this man, and this is a skin disease, right? I mean, Jesus could catch what this guy has in this moment. But what's amazing is what should have infected Jesus happens the opposite direction. Jesus infects this guy. Right? This guy becomes completely clean in an instant. Jesus is not scared to be identified with him or his problems. He's not worried. There's nothing too big or too scary that he wouldn't want to associate himself. And I want you to see that shows immense love for you and I, that there's nothing in our lives that Jesus is intimidated by. There's nothing no doubt too big that Jesus is like, I don't know if I can deal with that. He identifies and he says, I am willing. And yet, man, this is amazing. This is the first time that this guy has felt any physical contact in who knows how long. And it's from a God who loves him. And so I don't know about you, whatever you find yourself going through today, I want you to know Jesus feels for you. He's not just a far-off God who watches and tips his hat every now and then to those who pray really hard and go to church a lot. He's a God that came to be just like you and me, to walk the life that you and I have walked, and he feels what we feel. Even if it's irrational, even if we think we shouldn't feel it, he feels it for us. And he says, I'm willing. And I want you to know, listen, Jesus is willing today. to engage whatever you and I have, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not. Let's wrap it up with this. Check this out. Let's go to the next verse. In verse 43, I think, it says, so Jesus heals the guy, and he says this: don't tell anyone about this. Instead, go to the priest, let him examine you. Take along the offering required in the law of Moses for those who have been healed of leprosy. This will be a public testimony that you've been cleansed. Jesus realizes that there's a religious system still in place, that if this guy doesn't go and be recognized by it, that they still won't let him back in, right? So he's telling him to go. But he says, be quiet about it. Because Jesus isn't trying to draw crowds with his fancy miracles, right? He wants genuine heart and mind relationship. Check it out. But the man went and spread the word, right? So not only did the guy break all the rules coming, but then the first thing that Jesus tells him not to do, he does it anyway, right? You're like, well, this guy's clearly off to a bad start. Well, that's good news for you and I. All right, cool. But here, part of me understands, right? The man goes, spreads the word, proclaiming to everyone what had happened. And part of you understands, I mean, wouldn't you just not be able to contain yourself? Holy cow, I was just completely healed miraculously. Like, I can't keep this to myself. I mean, part of me understands that. I mean, that's kind of how I ended up where I am today. Jesus changed my life at 15. I just couldn't keep it to myself. I got to tell everybody and anybody, this is the most amazing guy I've ever met. This love is so incredible. But then on the other side, I want you to see this. It says, as a result, large crowds soon surrounded Jesus, and he couldn't publicly enter the town anywhere. And he had to stay out in the secluded places. But people from everywhere kept coming to him. This is the core, man. This is beautiful. I want you to catch this. This is the core of the message that Jesus came to bring to the planet. This is the core of why we exist as City Church and why we're doing what we're doing. Right here, Jesus takes his place. The man that was isolated because of Jesus can now enter back into community. But as a result of Jesus allowing him to enter into community, he is then isolated. This is the whole idea, that Jesus came to take his place. And I want you to know that Jesus took my place. At 15 years old, it was a heart and head acknowledgement and submission of what Jesus had already done for me on the cross. He died the death that I deserved. He lived the life I couldn't live. He got back up again, and he offered me life. He took my place. He took this man's place. And friends, he is willing to take your place. It's an incredible, incredible love. I'm going to invite the band to come. If you guys will start playing the pads, and we're going to wrap this up with a few application steps. And here's the deal. I don't want you to come, be inspired, and leave, and it doesn't have any effect on what tomorrow looks like. I hope that this is helpful. Maybe you're here, and you can relate with this story. Will you guys bring the pads up? Maybe you can relate with this guy named, no name here, identified by his problems. Here you go, babe. You can take it. See, there you go. I took her stand. Told you I did. I did this last time to her, and it was just crushing. All right, so again, maybe you're here and you can relate to this guy's story, right? You have spots on the inside. There's no cure. And maybe for the first time that you're hearing that religion can't help, but Jesus can. Maybe for the first time, you're hearing the invitation that religion can't do anything for you. There's no amount of effort or work that can go into it, but what Jesus did on the cross is enough for me and you, friends. He changed my life, and he can change yours. And maybe you're feeling this drawing in your heart, this stirring of your heart and mind right now, and I want you to know that's not just an emotional moment, that's God. Letting you know he loves you and drawing you to himself. And I want you to encourage you, listen, just like the man came, if you would bow the knees of your heart, and Jesus would change your life in an instant. Some of you in the room, you're followers of Jesus. You've been made clean, but honestly, you started to compartmentalize your life. There's areas that you bow to Jesus, other areas that you don't. Some of it's just in ignorance, right? You kind of just forgot that area existed. Others intentional. Don't really want you to touch that, Jesus. And Maybe while we're having a conversation, Jesus brought something up, something specifically that you've been trying to hold on to. I just wonder if you would be willing to trust him as he brings that issue up on your heart and mind. Say, Jesus, I want to bow this area too because you love me more than I could love myself. Or maybe, honestly, man, you're here and you may have been made clean by Jesus, and nothing you did to earn it. Jesus changed your life because of what he did in your place, and you're just grateful for it. And as a result, you're overwhelmed with that love and compassion, and you just want to extend that to others. In the same way that Jesus felt for this man, and you want to have that compassion and love for the world around you, for your neighbors, for your family, for your friends, for those that are hard to love, for those that are easy. You're like, man, I want to love like that. I want Jesus to work in and through me like that. Maybe you take a moment right now and say, God, would you help me feel for those around me? Help me not to be so preoccupied with myself that I could actually love and engage those around me. Or maybe you're inspired by the love of Jesus. You're inspired by what you see in this story, and you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And friends, I want to invite you. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And we would be honored for you to be a part of this team as we grow together, make a difference together, discover our purpose together. And it's not only see our lives change, but see God change lives through us.